Hi everyone, I'm Meg. If you haven't met me before or heard anything about this concept, I'm going to walk through an outline of the enterprise proposal. I actually volunteered for this the last time we were here in Austin, and together with a little bit of a working group, came up with this outline which I'll walk you through today. Before we did anything though, I did a pulse check on the community. So that involved more than 20 interviews with everyone across the ecosystem, from notaries to storage providers to Filecoin Foundation people to the Protocol Labs peeps, everyone across the community, just to get some sense check and a sentiment on what's working and what's not working, because these things could feed into an enterprise grade program. So today I'm just going to run you through what that scope would look like, as well as how it might work, and cover off on both sides of the spectrum. And I think I might be repeating a short version of this at the storage provider meetup this afternoon, but I will cover off both. So what are the consensus areas for both governance? So for this community today, this morning, and what are the consensus areas for storage providers? And then I'll explain how we'll do it. So I've heard Galen talk about some sprints. So, we should be using design thinking or human-centered design approaches, agile sprints, and working in a lean sort of methodology. So I'll cover off that as well. Next slide. Well, I think you're going to do it for me. You're going to be my mouse bitch.
Well, you're going to do it now. Sorry, I ended it off.
Yeah, it's probably easier. You're right. Okay, always start with why. So why are we proposing an enterprise program? So the current scope is limiting. We've got like 20% of the world's data is public. So by opening up 80% of, basically the entire market, there are plenty of use cases and verticals that have useful data. We know that early adopters they trade off risk and stage of development for incentives. So the File Plus incentive is going to still influence that buyer mindset. And it's already happening. We're seeing, applications that are coming in, large data sets that are private data, and they're trying to retrofit in the public program, and it's causing some friction. So the very high level scope is that we want to offer clients that have non-public data, so private data or enterprise data, that is still aligned with the Filecoin principles, goals, and purpose. We want to allow them to onboard onto the network. We will make use of the File Plus data cap as a resource to influence deal making, and storage providers will still be able to access the quality adjusted power incentive. I think I'm waiting till the end for questions. That's right, isn't it? Okay. Right, now this is tiny and it comes up a little bit different. So these next two slides actually are just a little bit of how it works. I'm just going to stand around here so I can read it myself. It really does split down the middle. For the first stage of this, how would we enable an enterprise program, really is relevant to storage providers on this first slide, and the second one is relevant to the governance community. So the best way to start a new program is we don't need a fully featured product. We don't need to know everything about it. We just need to know enough so that we're minimizing risk and we can launch with something. We'll all benefit from a learning cycle, and we'll use a cohort. Number two is there'll be a limited number of clients and storage providers. So it'll be enough that we can gain learnings from it, but not so much that we can't handle what will be a lot of manual processes until we figure out some of the automation and tooling. Things are going to change a little bit for clients because their data is going to be private. It's going to have some handling and classification requirements, and we're going to need them to be upfront about it. We're sort of seeing that this is naturally happening anyway, but I've just put it here as a step at number 4, is storage providers are acting as business developers, and they're starting to really get into the nitty-gritty of a deal. So understanding what the client needs, how it could work for them. And what I'm also proposing, and I've been playing around with a bit of a prototype, which is a web interface rather than using GitHub. So it's more user-friendly, collects a lot of data up front that can be used down the line, down at 6 when we start to talk about service levels and contracts. And I know that this might freak people out because it sounds a bit Web 2 world, but when we're starting to make a relationship with an organisation and we're making commitments to each other about data and what we want to do with it, what the client needs us to do and what we're going to serve them, we're starting to explore where this would fit into the process. I've skipped one at number 5, the lead. We're introducing this concept of a lead storage provider. That, you know, if we look at some of the examples of the big data sets going through the system at the moment, there's a lead. They're doing this business development. They're investing a lot of time and a lot of energy to bring in a client. So they should be eligible for the incentive today. And we're proposing something else, which is a lead origination bonus that they get to store 2 of the copies. And lastly, as the storage provider is going to be acting as this proxy for a client, they're also going to have to tell us and be transparent about their distribution plans. So tell us all the geographies that the data is being distributed, what their client data onboarding plan will look like, as well as their distribution timeframes. So it really sort of covers off, in a nutshell, at a high level, the storage provider stages. From a governance perspective, so we've talked, I think Galen, was it Galen or Deep? One of you mentioned about know your customer. In an enterprise program, we don't need a know your customer system that is institutional or finance grade, right? It doesn't need to be that heavy. We just really need to know these kind of 5 dimensions. Like, are they they're not a sanctioned company. Are they a real company? Do real people work there? Can we get this two-way email verification? So there may be systems out there that could do that, or we may need to go to the community to ask for something that can be, on some level, universal. There's a suggestion to make some differences in the process for notaries. So notaries will still be self-directed, but we want them to follow a bit of a playbook and some best practice, especially when it comes to these enterprise-grade deals or deal making, and that they can use some kind of KYC system. There's another ask I have for this program is that we have a dedicated set of notaries that are working on it to make it a success. This is learning ground. We're talking about like 6 to 8 months, and everyone that participates in it, whether they're a storage provider, a client, or a notary, this feedback loop will help us get to a place where we've got a really good program at the end of it. Now, this is another difference in the file cap or file plus cap, data cap process, which is that data cap is more aligned with the client, and there's 4 tranches over something that's algorithmically driven. The first one is a proof of concept, the second one is post proof of concept, the third one is within the first 12 months, and then there may be a fourth if there's an uplift in volume, significant uplift in volume. So I know that will be an area of consensus, which I'm just about to get into. And then lastly, you know, because this is enterprise grade, we're talking about introducing some service levels and contracts. We're asking the customer to have a little bit more accountability and responsibility. And it's get a little more stringent, I suppose. It should work in reducing some of the bad actors entering the system, but there's always going to be some level of abuse, no matter where you work in whatever industry. So in this MVP program, we just need enough monitoring and reporting to make sure there's no reputational risk. So I'm just going to I'll cover off in a little more detail the governance consensus areas that are aligned with that process that I just went through. I'll whiz through the storage provider ones because it's a separate community, but for full context, you'll be able to see what they are. So for the enterprise governance goals for this program, So take on some of those insights from the pulse check so that we can feed them into what might be a good governance process that's fit for purpose for enterprise. And secondly, to make life easier for everyone. So for clients, notaries, the foundation people, protocol labs, all the guys that I do know that Galen and Deep and Kevin work really hard behind the scenes, and we don't see it. It's like they're like swans. They're looking calm, cool, and collected, but there's a lot going on. I know. All right. So some of the headliners for governance goals are that clients will commence with a proof of concept as a pathway to onboarding. Now, we know that actually a lot of enterprise clients, especially when they're switching or making a big switching decision, use proof of concepts. So let's test this. We don't know if it's going to be applicable to everyone, but in the MVP, we can at least test this hypothesis. There is a suggestion, and it's something we've got to work through, that perhaps the distribution parameters might be different for an enterprise client. And there's 4 categories that we already know of, and I'm probably going to point at Danny because I think I'm using some of your words here. Slingshot's widely distributed, and so is File Plus. But in the enterprise program, maybe a client doesn't want 5 copies distributed around the world. And the last one, number 4, is really related to Australia. We live in this nanny state where the government won't let anyone send, or many industries, send data offshore. So perhaps the distribution is local or within the country. Number 7 is about KYC, which I explained a little bit before. Do we use a system? How deep is the scope, and how much do we really need to interpret? Notary level service expectations come into it. I think we've talked about this over the last 12 months quite a bit, but in this instance, if we are making commitments to clients, we also need to be able to do that on the back end or on the operational side. And then lastly, I had mentioned I'm looking for 8 to 10 notaries that really want to participate in this, and I believe it can't be done without incentives. I know you talk about a working group, but we need more participation, and I think incentives are a way to do that. I'm just going to whiz through these, but just for context so you understand. Again, they're aligned with the, it's funny, they've come up quite blue. They're aligned with the process flow that I just walked through. Storage providers are going to have some criteria to participate in this. We need to know that they're capable of, uploading the data and providing a level of good service to their clients. The value proposition is going to be almost identical to what it is in File Plus. There's not a lot of change there. Storage provider incentives, as I've mentioned, still, can access File Plus to offer to clients. They still can get quality adjusted power. The only difference here is that they're eligible for a lead origination bonus. The distribution parameters, I've just covered off those. They kind of sit in both groups. And lastly, we've already talked about the data-centric data cap, which may require a FIP. So Caitlin will have a regroup and chat about that today. And the goals, actually, which I should have covered off at the beginning, similar to what they are for governance. The real difference is that we're opening up the market to give storage providers a bigger opportunity of deal making. This is a high level, and you may look at it and think it's an optimistic plan, which it is. So I'm making this a live proposal today. I'm looking for either consensus or feedback or anything that might be a showstopper. And I'm proposing that on the 22nd of June, 2 weeks from today, that we're ready to go live. And I'm not really sure how to make that happen. So I'll be looking at Megan, Clara, Kevin, Galen, Deep to help me figure it out. Stefan as well. All of this stuff actually is in discussion 527, so I won't bore you with the minutiae of the detail. But one of the first things that will happen is, should it get approved? Are we ready to do this? The first two things are lining up to really like cracking working groups, one on the storage provider side and one on the notary governance side. Okay, lastly, I just wanted to point out that this is not changing File Plus, the current File Plus program that the guys just went through previously. This is in addition to, we're suggesting that there's another enterprise grade program for a different set of data that does different things. So it's not making changes across the board, and I've had a few questions about that. I would love feedback. I just want people to have a view. Do you support it or not? If you've got feedback, make it constructive.
No, this is awesome, Meg. Very excited to see this come alive. So it sounds like in 2 weeks, right? It's going to be an official notary call and official decision will be made. What about today?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's official now. I've presented it at the governance calls twice already. And the storage provider one as well. So there's enough information about it. I think I really just want to know, what are the showstoppers? What are the things that we haven't thought about? And I want to say that there are, in issue 527, are the detailed packs. One is governance and one is storage provider. There's a lot more information in there. So please do have a look at them. We don't know everything yet. I want all the questions to come out because then we can feed them into that planning phase that you saw before.
Perfect. And how are you going to select the notaries that you want to participate in this MVP?
I'd love volunteers, but I also would like some incentives on offer for them, because it has been a challenge bringing the working group together.
Absolutely. So do we have to come up in the next 2 weeks with a proposal for what they're...
I have one already.
Okay, awesome.
And I just need to show it to you.
Okay, great. I mean, this is awesome work. We have to do this. There's no doubt about it.
I think it'd be great, Meg, to discuss what you mean by client-centric data cap a bit more, because I think that's going to be a net new topic for people, and we might get some opinions.
Yeah, look, I think it's just, look, we can work on what those dimensions look like. I've had a lot of feedback from storage providers. One of the biggest pain points was that the algo that's delivering the first tranche is not enough for the distribution, especially on large scale, and it's not working. It's tripping everyone up at the moment. And, you know, some of the seal deals that a few of us are working on, it's stop, start, and it's not a good experience for them, and it certainly wouldn't be for the client if someone's communicating that back. So if we know that the organisation is trusted, and we know that we're speaking to an IT personnel at that organisation, and we're also speaking to whomever might be the client sponsor, we know they're real and authentic, and they want to prove something. So if we put ourselves in the shoes of a client, they've got something. They're investing time and energy in this, and they're going to have to take that to someone to approve it. So let's just give them whatever that first proof of concept. We can tailor that. We can decide what it is. I'm suggesting it's more than 100 TIB and less than 1 PB byte, right? So one proof of concept, one tranche, we kick that off. Then in consultation with the client, the notaries and the storage provider, understand what the next tranche looks like for them. What works for them? What are the types of files that they want to be onboarding? So it is about a focus on what they need and what will make it a success for them, as opposed to a percentage that may or may not work, and the client doesn't really understand it, and neither do the storage providers. So I think I haven't maybe answered the question deep about, are 4 tranches the right number? I don't know. But I am answering the question about what the problem is.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Those initial percentages were just employed as like a default and more of a safety check. Meg, I don't think this constitutes a FIP at all. I think this is just a basic tooling change. Like when we make that automated request to an LDN, the bot actually figures out the amount of Tebi bytes today, right? So a bot does the math and says, hey, notaries, give us a proposal for X Tebi bytes of data cap to be released to this client. And all you're saying is, hey, instead of a bot doing that calculation based on a conservative percentage rate or a weekly onboarding rate, oh, wow, now I see my face. That's cool. You instead basically just get to say, we've worked with the client. We understand their needs. Based on their current needs, we think they need this amount. And all that means is the comment that's going to GitHub that's kicking off the proposals and the processes is coming with a certain amount. And that amount is completely fungible. Literally today, if you could impersonate the bot and like you took over the bot's account on GitHub, you could manually change that number and it would actually change the amount of data cap that's being proposed and being sent out.
Okay, that's
so
good
that
to know.
limitation is not on chain. So this is, as far as I understand it, it's a much easier change to do. It's a very reasonable change. I definitely support it. I don't think it requires a FIP, which should save us a lot of time.
Yeah. I might just get a storage provider view on this because I heard a different. When we catch up with Caitlin later, let's talk about it because they told me there was a technical limitation, but let's see.
No, I know who you're talking about, and there's no technical limitation. We've had this conversation with them a few times where we've had to correct this assumption. It's not a technical limitation in the protocol, it's a technical limitation in the tooling. So that just means that we've embedded that in the software and it will catch it and say, hey, this is violating the thing, don't send this like proposal through. But the underlying protocol level supports whatever we want it to support and it's super flexible.
Okay.
So the change we need to make is at the tooling level, which is not requiring a FIP. It just requires basic flexibility to be built into the bots and the validation we're doing on the request in the back end of the Fill Plus app, not something that has to change in the actual Filecoin protocol.
You were mentioning there's a new interface that you're working on. Is this something you can share?
It's just a prototype. So it really is a UX. Yes, I can share it, but I can do it in the break if anyone wants to have a look.
Absolutely, because it's one of the challenges as well that keeps coming up. Like, GitHub is just not, enterprise, ready, or customers are just getting lost.
Yeah.
What you've shown us is awesome. So I wanted to see if the rest of the community could see.
Yeah, for sure. I'll make the link also available in the discussion issue.
Great. Let's see. Also, Stefan, I was going to have you introduce yourself. Not everyone knows you.
I'm Stefan, work for Protocol Labs, focused on the storage provider growth.
Yes, thank you. So one of the questions that I often ask myself when thinking about these proposals is how is this going to go off the rails in like 2 months rather than like how would this go off?
There's a whole section I've dedicated to what could go wrong. In the papers.
Okay. And then in thinking about what can go wrong,
yes,
one of the other things that I often try and do is think about where are my blind spots looking at this from the things we've seen in the past on GitHub with my like narrow Eurocentric view, and trying to wonder how is this going to apply in other regions,
I would love
other
to hear
data
all those.
sets.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you have someone on the working group that has really focused on like taking this and let's put it in a particular context, in a particular region or a particular type of client.
No, we haven't.
Say, this is how this isn't going to serve this group, or this is how this could be really potentially manipulated and again go off the rails if this group uses it in this way compared to how it was intended.
Yeah, 100%. The cultural and regional differences need to be factored in. We don't know what they all are. That's why the working group will need representation across them, so that plague book could be literally a contents which says in this region go to page 12. This is what you need to consider, or these are cultural differences. Off the top of my head, what could go wrong is that we just need enough of a cohort of storage providers and clients to make the learnings valuable. Like if it's too small, it's not going to be viable, but a lot of this will be automated. So it's going to need also like a community manager to run some interference and help do some of the manual stuff. And it's going to come down to the people, as it always does with any new product launch. Needs to be an engaged team of people that can help with this.
And then we've talked about like, wanting to see if there are showstoppers before we like try this proof of concept. Do you, where you are right now, think that there are showstoppers to launching this end of June and July that you think I really need to get this other type of represented interest or knowledge base on this team? Like, is there somebody that you're like, I haven't heard from X person, and we can put that call out now in this room and like try and find them, that you could like interview and be more confident going into that end of June launch?
Yes, definitely from the Asian region, from China, Korea. There's not a lot of representation there, so definitely need that in the community. Alex is in the back there. He's been great in helping me engage the legal team, but I'm ready to hear from you guys about what we haven't thought about yet. So that's probably those are pretty important. And then I do sometimes feel unclear what the pathway is to consensus. So I'm looking at you guys to help me understand that.
Awesome. So a couple representatives from some other regions, China and Korea. I know there's a number of you on this call. Raise your hand and jump in. Join the discussion that's on GitHub. Join Async, where we have some questions for some legal team, and then some questions just from the broader kind of governance team and governance community on what is it going to take to launch this. I think that fundamentally, like, one of our sticking points will be, what can we launch without a FIP? And if we do need a FIP, how long will it take to get to that network upgrade?
100%.
And that kind of we have to then backdate and fill into. But if there are ways, and it sounds mostly like there are, but again, we have another conversation this afternoon, but just if there are things that we can test and launch as a first step POC without a FIP, that changes that timeline significantly, that we would then be able to implement. So anybody on the call that wants to join in?
Galen also, as well as knowing that I always have a multiple of points, will also know that I always say at this point that for me, the whole Filecoin Plus project is about preventing self-dealing, and everything else is just gravy on top of that. So as far as this goes, I think like this is absolutely like, this is a great way of flensing away the other stuff that we talk about, like public data and so forth, that hopefully, if these are real deals, then that's useful data, and we're preventing self-dealing, and we're encouraging exactly the kind of commercial use that we want in the project. So I think it's great. The other, just listening to you to walk through it, it also made me think that I think that there is, we forget sometimes that the Filecoin Plus project and data cap can and does indeed have a number of inroads into it. We always had, like, as someone mentioned earlier, the automated GitHub process. So I really like the idea of having multiple ways, as long as that doesn't, just confuse the usability for external people. So I really like that. Galen's absolutely right that, like, the biggest challenge with these things is because of the self-dealing preventing gaming, and that's only going to emerge by us trying it and working out how clever people can try and cheat it. But the other part of it that I will just flag, because we've talked about it a little bit, but we didn't talk about it in this, is that as I guess in the role as the Filecoin Foundation's notary, I'm always looking at proposals and this system as a risk for centralization, right? So I think that the one of the challenges we've seen as we try and bend the existing system to work for the idea of solution providers as business development leads, and also trying to work with them for deals that make sense for large commercial clients, is large commercial clients and business development folks really want to work with a smaller cohort of known and trustable storage providers, right? Which leads to this sort of dangerous position where we're handing out the bulk of our data cap to a handful of storage providers. I don't like that. Feels something that's kind of implicit in large scale commercial data deals. And I know we've talked a little bit about having like a template contract that would be the contract that, or contractual language that you might use and maybe even require for business deals so that for them to be able to match with this. And I think that's my biggest concern, right? How can we make sure that every storage provider on the network has an opportunity to participate in these deals?
Yeah.
So that isn't even a question, is it?
It's a really, really good hypothesis. It'll probably be the most challenging one, but yeah, we'll add it into what we'll test.
Oh, Deep has a hand. We have one more
Yeah.
hand. Sorry, you're not off the hook.
One quick one. Meg, I know that you talked about like this sort of lead generation bonus thing. My interpretation of this from the Phil Plus side, rather than like a sales pipeline thinker, I guess, on this front, is more just that, okay, if you're the SP that's worked to onboard this client, you're going to want to store an additional replica of it, or at least we'll be okay with you storing an additional replica of it. We've seen this tried and tested with other LDNs, where we've seen as long as there's at least 3 other SP organizations involved, all it does is it brings that cap up to about 40% instead of the usual 25 or 30%. I think at this point, the notaries are relatively comfortable with that as long as there's transparency and usefulness in that additional replica. And so I think it would be interesting to add a little parameter in there that like at least that second replica should be in a different like location. Otherwise, it's not useful at all.
Yep.
And so it should be with a different SP ID on chain, and it should be in a different location. And uphold the same sort of requirement around availability or retrievability for that client. So the SLA should be comparable. And I think with that, I think it's a relatively comfortable thing for notaries to get behind, as long as they do all that stuff that Danny just talked about and you just talked about in terms of safely delivering that data cap for the right purpose, for the right reason.
So I'm Andrew Stanko. I'm on the finance team here in Picnic. So I hear like one great conversation on risk. I hear lots of talk about like lead origination fees. Like, so that got like my banking experience excited, but I come from like the known bastion of like honesty, the energy industry. So like trying to synthesize those two together. But can you talk a little bit more about like what the economics would be around that? Like those fees? Because I hear like it touches on the same concepts. One, I understand the incentives, and then 2, I also understand the risk and the balance for those incentives to maybe be, taken to be exploited. So
look, we started with kind of a Web 2 world commission thinking, which actually just didn't seem to fit, right? Like commissions, trailing commissions. It was like, it's not really Web 3 world. So it just seems simple, and I'm pretty sure it didn't come from me. It came from the insights from the storage providers, the suggestion of storing another copy. It's simpler, it's cleaner, they understand what it's worth. So I can't really answer directly what the question is. It depends on what the volume is, what it's worth to a storage provider. But what I do know is, I also work for a storage provider, I understand the effort that goes into that business development that's not acknowledged. And if you're bringing that to the network, there's got to be some incentive. And it may not be this. We might surface other ideas when we're testing it.